The sun shone down on the lush green lawn, painting it in a brilliant hue that seemed to glow against the backdrop of the towering oak trees. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying with it the sweet scent of spring. It was a picture-perfect day in the small suburban neighborhood, and everything seemed to be in its rightful place. Except for the man standing in the center of his front yard, clad head to toe in a shimmering red dress that fluttered in the breeze. His long, wavy hair tumbled down his back, cascading over his bare shoulders. He adjusted the delicate straps of his high-heeled shoes, their heels clicking against the concrete as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The man, whose name was James, had never felt more exposed in his entire life. He could feel the warmth of the sun on his bare arms and the cool air brushing against his exposed legs. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves as he looked around nervously, wondering if anyone had noticed him yet. As he stood there, lost in thought, he couldn't help but remember the events that had led up to this moment. It had all started with a simple curiosity, an innocent question he had asked his wife while they were watching a movie one night. What would it be like, he had asked her, to wear the opposite gender's clothing? She had laughed at first, but then her expression had turned thoughtful. It wouldn't be so bad, she had said, if you did it with me. Before he knew it, they were standing in a department store's lingerie section, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder as she guided him towards the racks of feminine apparel. She had picked out the dress he was wearing now, insisting that it looked perfect on him. And now here he was, standing in his front yard, wondering how the hell he was going to explain this to his neighbors. A car drove down the street, its occupants craning their necks to get a better look at the strange sight. James' cheeks flushed crimson as he realized they had been spotted. He felt a sudden urge to run back inside, to hide from the world, but he forced himself to remain where he was, hoping that no one would recognize him. As he stood there, he couldn't help but admire the way the dress hugged his curves, the way the high heels made him feel taller and more confident. It was a strange, intoxicating sensation, and for a moment he forgot about his surroundings and the people watching him. He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on his skin and the gentle breeze through his hair, and he wondered if this was what it felt like to truly be free. When he opened his eyes again, he saw her standing in the doorway of their house, watching him with a mixture of amusement and pride. She gave him a small wave, and he forced a weak smile in return. She nodded, as if to say, "Good job," and disappeared back inside. With one final deep breath, James released his grip on the banister and took a step forward, slowly walking down the sidewalk towards who knows what awaited him at the end of the block. As he walked, he felt eyes on him from every direction. He could hear whispers behind closed curtains and see the curious glances from passers-by. But somehow, it didn't feel as daunting as it should have. Perhaps it was the confidence that had been gifted to him by his wife's encouragement, or maybe it was just the realization that in this moment, he was truly living his truth. Either way, James kept walking, his head held high, the sun shining down on him like a spotlight on a star. And as he continued down the street, he couldn't help but wonder where this newfound path would lead him. It was a sunny afternoon, and the birds sang overhead as they flitted from branch to branch in the nearby trees. The scent of freshly mown grass wafted on the breeze, mingling with the sweet aroma of flowers in bloom. The world around him seemed to be moving in slow motion, as if time itself had paused to take in the sight of a man dressed as a woman walking down the street. A small group of children giggled as they pointed at him, their innocent laughter filling the air. James smiled shyly, feeling a warmth spread through his chest despite the awkwardness of the situation. He waved at them, feeling a sense of camaraderie as they waved back, their faces lit up with curiosity and excitement. As he approached the corner, he noticed an elderly woman sitting on a bench, watching him intently. She smiled gently and patted the spot beside her, inviting him to sit down. Feeling a sudden surge of courage, James crossed the street and sat down beside her. "Hello there, handsome," she said with a twinkle in her eye. "My name's Edna. What's yours?" He hesitated for a moment, wondering how to respond. Should he use his male name or the feminine name his wife had given him? Before he could decide, he found himself saying, "My name's Jessica." It felt strange, using a name that wasn't his own, but somehow it also felt right. Edna nodded, as if she'd known all along. "Well, Jessica," she said, "it's nice to meet you. You're a brave one, you know that? Not everyone has the courage to be who they really are. You should be proud of yourself." James looked down at his hands, feeling a lump forming in his throat. He didn't know what to say, so he simply smiled and thanked her. As they sat there together, James felt a sense of peace wash over him. Perhaps, he thought, it wasn't so bad being Jessica after all. The sun continued to shine, and the birds sang their songs, oblivious to the tiny moments of profound human connection taking place all around them. People passed by them, some giving them curious glances, others not even noticing they were there. But for that brief moment, James and Edna were the center of the world, two souls connected by the shared experience of being true to oneself. Eventually, Edna rose from the bench, patting James gently on the shoulder. "You take care now, Jessica," she said. "You're going to do just fine." With those words, she began to walk away, her steps slow and steady. James watched her go, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope well up inside him. As the seconds ticked by, he realized that he was no longer afraid. He had come to terms with who he was, and more importantly, he had the love and support of his wife. He might not know exactly where this new path would lead him, but he knew that he would face it head-on as Jessica. And so, with a newfound sense of purpose and courage, James rose from the bench, straightened his dress, and continued down the street, the world around him waiting eagerly to see what he would do next. He had no idea where this new journey would take him, but he knew that he would face it head-on as Jessica. He would embrace his true self and live each day to the fullest, surrounded by the love and support of those who truly understood him. As he walked, he couldn't help but feel a weight lifted from his shoulders. The burden of keeping his true identity hidden had been replaced by a sense of freedom and liberation. He felt like he was finally living his life, and no one could take that away from him. The sun shone brightly in the sky, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and the sound of laughter. People passed by him, some nodding in acknowledgement, others exchanging knowing glances. But for once, James didn't feel self-conscious. He felt like he belonged, like he was exactly where he was meant to be. As he rounded a corner, he caught sight of a familiar storefront. It was the dress shop where he and his wife had found his wedding dress. A warmth spread through his chest as he remembered the joy they had felt that day, the love they had shared. With a renewed sense of determination, he marched towards the door and stepped inside. The shop was empty, but he could hear his wife's familiar laughter coming from the back room. He made his way through the racks of dresses, the memories of their shopping trips flooding back to him. Finally, he reached the door at the back and pushed it open. There she was, his beautiful wife, sitting at a work table, her hands stained with paint. She looked up when she heard him enter, her eyes wide with surprise and love. "Jessica," she breathed, rising to her feet. "Is it really you?" James felt a lump form in his throat as he nodded, unable to speak. His wife rushed forward and threw her arms around him, holding him tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I always knew you could do this." Together, they stood there for a moment, lost in the embrace, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. And as they stood there, James knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the love and support of his wife by his side. They were in this together, and together, they could conquer anything. Eventually, they pulled apart, and his wife gestured to the paintings she had been working on. They were portraits of him, each one capturing a different aspect of his personality. James' breath caught in his throat as he took them in. "They're beautiful," he managed to say. His wife smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "They're not half as beautiful as you," she replied, taking his hand in hers. "Come on, let's go home, my love. There's someone I want you to meet." Together, they left the dress shop, hand in hand, their future stretching out before them like a blank canvas waiting to be painted. The world was theirs for the taking, and together, they would create a life filled with love, understanding, and acceptance. As they walked, James couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over him. He had finally come to terms with who he was, and he knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. But that was okay, because for the first time in a long time, he was finally free. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button. And let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.